Positive defined benefit transfer out advice and why this type of advice is now so rare. So this is a big topic. As you will know, defined benefit pension transfer advice is one, becoming harder to obtain, and two, it's getting more and more difficult to get a positive transfer out. So today, in a second edition of this, we'll be having Jonathan Laws, our most senior and experienced financial advisor, joining me on today's video to give a little bit of insight. It's always nice to hear someone else's opinion other than just mine. Okay, Jonathan, how are you today?
I'm not bad, Dominic. I've got a little bit of man flu still, but on the mend.
Very good, glad to hear. All right, so Jonathan, if you could kindly start off for our viewers of explaining exactly what a positive and a negative final salary pension transfer report actually is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, long story short, a positive transfer report is one where, based on all the analysis that's gone into it, your pension transfer specialist has advised that the best thing for you would be to transfer your defined benefit pension into a flexible access arrangement or to purchase annuity or whatever it is. A negative one is where, based on all that analysis, they've decided that you should keep it where it is or retain it where it is now, as the term is used. And again, there are very many reasons for that. It could be that it's just not a good idea for you. It could be it's not the right time, etc., etc. So yeah, that's what they are.
Okay, so it's not possible to have anything in the middle. It's either a positive or a negative.
There is, technically speaking, a middle ground, but that is not during full advice. Some providers will have what's known as abridged advice. You may have heard of this, which is a kind of in-between step with two outcomes. One outcome is no, don't do it. Retain your DB scheme. And the other one is, at this point in time, we can't determine, and if you wish to, look for us to have a proper deep dive under the bonnet, because with abridged advice, they don't do proper cash flow modeling. It's much more high touch, more of a kind of checklist style system. And if you want them to have a proper deep dive and advise you whether a transfer or not is suitable, which is what you require in order to transfer your pension, so you cannot get abridged advice and then go off and transfer your pension, you still require full advice. You would then go away, say, yes, I'd like to have full advice, and then they will provide the advice. And again, just because they've told you that it's not a no at abridged does not mean that when they do the full-on analysis at the full advice that they might not come back to you and say, right, no, you still shouldn't do it.
Okay, understood. What is the key information that is required as part of the advice process for the authorised pension transfer specialist to make the report decision?
Right, so the key information is they need to know absolutely everything about you. Then that's not just financial or not just, the numbers. It's not, how much is your house worth? How much is your mortgage? How much do you spend? How much do you want to spend? What are your income? What's your state pension? All these types of things, what pensions do you have? Do you have ISAs? Great. How are they invested? Blah, blah, blah. What type of investor are you? Do you panic when the markets go down? Or do you want even more risk when the markets go down because it's an opportunity? Fundamentally, they need to find out what makes you tick. And then they've got to say to yourselves, right, where are you now? And where do you want to go? And how does this DB pension fit between getting you from point A to point B? And if you can't get to point B without transferring, is it worth the risk that goes into getting to point B, or could you jeopardize yourself and you end up in an alternative position where you're worse off because of that? And that's it. Essentially, they need to know absolutely everything. So some clients go, oh, why do you need to know that? Oh, that's getting a bit personal. That is the whole point. It needs to be personal. You need to really get down and know your advisor and trust your advisor, because they are working in your best interest to provide advice. They are not they are not to sign a form. They are not to rubber stamp anything. They need to know the insides and out, what makes you tick, what you want to do, what are your hopes, dreams and aspirations, how does a DB scheme fit into that, and why would you give up such a valuable benefit, especially as the FCA is concerned, incredibly valuable benefit, unless you can actually show and determine why you want to do it. You can't have wishy-washy reasons. You need to have proper articulated goals, and you need to be well thought out.
Very good. And how long would you say, obviously it sounds quite long-winded, how long would you say it takes you on average with your clients to get down that level of information? And at what stage of the profile do you normally collect that with your clients?
Yeah, so it really depends. You know, some clients are very simple arrangements. A lot of times actually getting to know the client and understanding them and doing risk profiles and having a chat to them about markets and what money means to them, and that could be done quite quickly. You know, if you build rapport with a client, you know, that can be done in under a week. A lot of times the sticking point is actually obtaining the boring stuff, the value of pensions, how they're invested, because, you know, a lot of times clients will have old workplace schemes and they'll be really kind of, you know, not very technology focused. You know, it can take weeks to extract. It's like getting blood out of a stone sometimes. I'm sure you know, many of the viewers listening to this are probably getting PTSD of the times they try to, you know, go to Aviva or Scottish Widows and get a valuation or figure out how much they were paying. And you got to remember, it might be ×4, ×5, ×6, because you're dealing with 6 different policies. So, you know, ostensibly, you know, we kind of say to clients that they come to us with good reasons and there's a good rationale that we could potentially get advice provided within 4 weeks. It has happened shorter than that where clients are on the ball, but ideally, you know, we would like 6+ weeks left, although can do it before, because that just gives a bit of leeway there. Saves you having to go down the express route, you know, kind of jump the queue with the pension transfer specialists. That might cost you another £1,000 or so, and no one wants to pay £1,000 more than they have to. And for some, it just cannot be possible. Some schemes will just take so long to provide the advice that you know, the CTV will expire long before we get the information to provide the advice, which again is another reason why, and you know, you've done so many videos on this, is that you really need to have your financial advisor be the one who dictates the pace. You know, you don't want to be going to you don't want to have a CTV in your hands and then go, right, now I need to find a financial advisor. You want to have already found the financial advisor you trust and you build a rapport with first. Then they help you together. You work together to obtain the CETV, and that will save you. You know, you can't quantify it, but the level of stress and the comfort it will provide will be many multiples of the actual fees. You know, savings.
Understood. What are some of the typical reasons why an authorized and regulated pension transfer specialist may advise a client to retain their safeguarded assets? So just to clarify that, viewers, we're talking about when the pension transfer specialist comes back with a negative advice report advising you, the client or any client, to retain and keep their defined benefit pension assets.
Yeah, so caveat, everyone's situation is different. Everyone will have unique things, but just in our experience and my experience personally, the key things you will see that, you know, will lead to almost a default no, keep it. What you have to remember is guaranteed income is incredibly valuable. You know, it costs a lot of money. It doesn't cost as much money as it used to be able to provide, but you know, going forward, it's expensive. So, and the FCA has made the determination that, you know, as I kind of say to clients, that guaranteed incomes are the greatest thing since sliced bread. You know, even though you've had pension freedoms come in, even though less than 10% of people annuitize their defined contribution pot these days, the FCA absolutely adores guaranteed income because you are not taking on any investment risk. So what the pension transfer specialist will say, right, how many, or how high is the value of the alternative guaranteed income streams do you have? Do you have another defined benefit pension? Does your spouse have another defined benefit pension? Do you have, how much is your UK state pensions entitlements? And what they want to look at, right, how much guaranteed income do they have covering their expenditure needs in retirement? And is this DB plugging a shortfall? Now, 9 times out of 10, if you don't have all your income stream covered by guaranteed income, or you don't have another source of secure income, and again, buy-to-let properties, not a secure source because your tenant might, you know, might not be able to rent it out next week or next time you roll over, and there might be other issues or whatever. So they'll take that into account, but what they really want is guaranteed income. If you have a shortfall, you have to justify, you know, why that shortfall can be met with a transfer that it isn't better than just keeping it where it is and getting that another level in. So they'll typically say, look, you don't have enough guaranteed income in. You can't afford to take the risk of giving up that guaranteed income, because there's a good chance if you transfer, you'll be worse off from an income point of view, or there's a good chance it'll be. So that's that. Another very typical one, the other typical one you'll see is an age-related thing, or retirement. They call it, pension transfer specialists have kind of named it the why now thing. And that might be, you have a few clients, and typically they're higher net worth clients who have, money coming out of their ears, and the DB might not be a very big part of their assets, and it might be completely and utterly, surplus to requirement. But, a lot can change. If you're 50 or 55 and you have no intention to retiring at 65, as far as the FCA is concerned, as far as the pension transfer specialist is concerned, perhaps quite rightly, why do you need to make that decision now? If you don't need to access the money for another 3, 4, 5 years, why do you need to do the transfer now? Because in 3 or 4, 5 years, that's a lot of times. Things can change, jobs can change, your marital status might change. You might be saying now, oh, I want to transfer because I'm not married, but you might meet the love of your life next year. And you're loving the fact you've got a 50% spousal pension and whatnot. So unless you're, in that position where you are retired, this is it, you're entering retirement or you're near retirement, they'll say, right, you've got great reasons. I have some clients who read the report, you get halfway through it and you're like, God, they're telling me all these great reasons why I should transfer. And then you get to the end and they go, yeah, but you're not going to retire for a few years. So keep it for now and come back next year. And that will be the default position. You've really got to answer that why now question.
And just a quick side question to that, how would you say that for clients who are looking to pass on, say, assets to beneficiaries, this is very common with wealthy clients who say, the DB is surplus to requirements, I want to take on a higher level of equity risk or whatever it might be, I want to grow and pass this asset on to my beneficiaries. What would you say to clients like that with the PTS why now question? Would you still say, well, you should continue in your DB for as long as possible, take all the benefits, and then potentially transfer out or consider a transfer out at a later stage?
So what you'll typically see in a situation like that is that the pension transfer specialist will say, right, if you truly value those death benefits, take the DB and buy a big life assurance policy with it. If it's truly surplus to requirements to you, why don't you just use the premium, the income to buy a premium, and then when you die, your spouse will get all this and you can put it in a trust and you can get all of that. A lot of clients come to us with that, I want to be able to pass it on. And actually, when you kind of stress test them and you go, oh, why don't you go buy life insurance? They go, oh, that's a waste of money. Okay, then death benefits don't really mean as much as you told us they meant to you. So that is, that's what will happen. That's why you've got to have proper rationale for why you want to do this. What does the DB transfer allow you to do that keeping the DB doesn't? And is the juice worth the squeeze? Is the risk worth it? And if it does go wrong, well, you are unlucky, are you going to be living in a tent in retirement if it goes wrong? And that's what they want to make sure it doesn't happen.
All right, very good. And just conversely to that then, so the opposite question, likewise, what would you say are some of the key reasons why a pension transfer specialist often does advise a client to move ahead or advises a positive transfer outcome, as we could refer to it?
Yeah, so the obvious one, and it's obviously the one you don't want, is ill health. So and that is ill health. So not sorry to kind of downplay horrible conditions, but anything that's kind of long term, like diabetes or other even a heart condition or whatever, it needs to be something that any physician would look at you and say, right, I could sign a letter or I could verify that there is a drastically reduced life expectancy here. So the obvious ones are cancer or other kind of health issues where the client is very, very, very unlikely to meet their expected, the average life expectancy of someone their age. So even if you've had cancer but you're in remission and you're all healthy, that will not qualify as ill health, because a lot of people have cancer and live for a very long time. It's only if you have a material reduction in your life, in your life expectancy, that you're going to get into a situation where you can prove that an annuity doesn't work for you, because you're not going to be around to derive most of the benefit. And sometimes you see from clients, who kind of say, oh, I think that applies to me because no one in my family has ever lived above 80 or something, which is great, but that could just be chance. There's you might live to 100, so just because you've got family history of this, that, and the other, it might not be your history. Might not be your history. You might not have these issues. Just because your dad died of a heart attack and your grandfather died of a heart attack doesn't mean you do. And with heart conditions and stuff, most people die from a heart attack or old age anyway. So you really need to have something where you can say, right, I'm ill, I'm not going to make it to 86, whatever you tell me I'm going to make it to in the cash flow. I'm going to be lucky to scrape 75. Then you're in a position, right, well, he's not around, she's not around, she's not going to be there to actually obtain any of the benefits of the annuity. Or it might, and even in those situations, it might be the case that you want an annuity, and annuity is great for you, but actually you could go and transfer out and get a really big enhanced annuity. Big example, I've got a client at the moment, really nice chap. Unfortunately has a cancer diagnosis. He's got a very big CETV, and he could get £35,000 a year. But because of his ill health, and I think we're using Aviva, he could get £75,000 a year now. So his scheme is basically offering half of what he could get on the open market, because they are basing him on the average person. But unfortunately for him, he's not the average person. He's entitled to a much higher value because they don't expect him to live as long, although he might live as long. But he also likes guaranteed income. He doesn't want to transfer because he wants freedom or flexibility or this, that, and the other. He wants to transfer because he's not maximizing his benefits, because he can get a lot more on the open market. So that's sorry to go on and on, but that is the key one. And I'm only going on and on because a lot of clients think it applies to them because of they've had diabetes for a while, or they've got high blood pressure or whatever it is, or they're overweight, and these are all things that will perhaps kind of personally, and even to will make a rationale for why you want to transfer, but they won't be a solid reason to transfer in and of itself. And that's just to kind of clarify. The other ones, the other typical ones you see, although again are less common now. These are the ones you used to see a lot of the time, because you've got loads of other assets, and the spreadsheet says, right, you'll be better off if you transfer. 3-4 years ago, that is why 75 to 80% of transfer advice was to transfer, because the spreadsheet said you will be better off transferring. If you give up flexible access and you get some modest income growth, investment growth, based on everything you told us, you will have more money at age 80, 85, 99, whatever. But unfortunately, because that's not guaranteed, and because the FCA has kind of made a determination that every day a 50% market drop might be around the corner, they've made a determination that that is not a reason to transfer. Just because the spreadsheet says yes does not mean that you should do it, because there's a risk the spreadsheet would be wrong, inputs could be wrong, and fundamentally at the end of the day, if you don't need to do it, why do it, is basically their interpretation. They don't want you taking on risk, regardless of your risk profile, if you don't have to. If you will do all the things you want in life by keeping the DB, then that will be the default advice. You really need to have a thorough, overwhelming reason to do it. Otherwise, the pension transfer specialist is just going to advise. Even if the pension transfer specialist personally thinks to himself, "Cool, I'd probably want to transfer if I was you." That, based on all the framework and what they know the FCA wants and what they've got to prioritize, they are going to advise you just to keep it, and that's it.
Yeah, and it's very interesting the points you make about ill health and serious ill health, which is the slight definition where within a 12-month period, it's effectively not looking good for clients. And that's a key area with clients. And just to say that, to add to that, if we do have a client who has ill health, it's not as if we say, oh, it's not a good enough reason. Jonathan and the financial advisors will always document this thoroughly as much as possible to ensure that it's on file. But as Jonathan said, unlikely to provide sufficient reasons. So Jonathan, why, if you had to say, why do you think fewer and fewer clients, I mean, you just kind of answered this, why do you think fewer and fewer clients are being advised positive transfers now in 2023, even compared to, say, 2 years ago when you were reading advice reports? What do you think are the key drivers and factors in the number of positive transfers coming down?
Yeah, so the main factor is the FCA scrutiny. You know, a lot of firms that were advising people to transfer, you know, shouldn't have been. You know, the FCA has ruled very heavily that, you know, people were being advised to transfer when they shouldn't be, or perhaps, you know, shouldn't be doing it yet. That's why they really emphasized the why now question a couple of years ago they brought in. And that's fundamentally it, you know. Just because it's not a bad idea doesn't mean it's the best idea. And we kind of joke, you know, my US clients, and we're SEC regulated in the US, and they're very kind of, you know, it's a cultural thing as well. In America, it's all about risk taking. You know, okay, the SEC might not like crypto and all this, but typically speaking, if you want to take on risk, you know, the regulators in the US are all very happy for you to take on risk. Our regulator over here in Blighty is very much the opposite. They don't want you taking the risk. I think, the powers that be at the FCA, especially in the pensions department, probably lost about 15 years of life when the pension freedoms came out, because they all had heart attacks, thinking, oh, you're not going to buy an annuity, a really expensive annuity. You know, you're now going to take on risk and control and flexibility. And you know, they love guaranteed income, and they really don't want you, you know, you got to pry out that dead hands, give it up unless you've got overwhelming reasons to do it. And fundamentally, there are really good, high quality advisors out there who wrote fantastic reports, gave fantastic advice, and the FCA is saying, no, your advice is rubbish. You've done a disservice to your client. Whereas any independent person might review that report and go, well, that makes sense to me, and she's better off now than she was then, having transferred. But the FCA goes, yeah, but you shouldn't have said it, and you got lucky, or something like that, and that's not good enough. So, you know, Dominic and I, and you know, some of our other financial advisors joke with each other, and we say to ourselves, right, what financial advisor in their right mind would get involved with defined benefit pension advice? Because, you know, one day you tell someone, oh, you should transfer. It's a great reason to do it. And based on everything you've said and the rules in place at that time, it's great advice. But a year's time, their interpretations will change, and they'll turn around and review it, or a client makes a complaint or something. They'll review it and go, oh, well, you shouldn't have done that based on blah, 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 blah. You shouldn't do it, even though, you know, the regulator would have agreed with it 12, 18 months ago. The goalposts are always changing. And that's why, you know, they'll always err on the side of caution. And it's better to be safe and advise you keep it than it is to take that risk and tell you not to transfer. But, you know, whether that's right or wrong, whether it's a system that's a bit warped, you know, it kind of is what it is. All you can do is play the hand you're dealt.
Well, that leads very nicely on to the next question, Jonathan. So number 6 is, do you think the FCA's current guidance on DB pension transfers is helping to protect consumers?
Overwhelmingly, yes. The amount of, whilst perhaps it's overstepping or kind of taking it to the one extreme to the other, I think that is the extreme you want to have. You don't want, you know, what you had with the British steel tobacco, where it was the wild, wild west. Nothing was regulated, regulated, but no oversight. And, you know, Dominic, you know this very well. Sometimes we have clients come to us and they have the most ridiculous reasons for wanting to transfer. Or, you know, you're going through it and you're just, you know, you can actually smell the burning money as they're explaining it to you. You know, I had one client 6 to 8 months ago who wanted to cash in a DB, liquidate it, and then buy a buy-to-let property. which, as I kind of told her politely, you'd probably destroy about 50% of your wealth in one decision, and any pension transfer specialist will let you do it. Might as well be looking for a new career, because that, would be, just a dreadful use of a defined benefit scheme. So yes, it is protecting consumers from themselves. If you remove the requirement for DB advice, the destruction in wealth in 6 to 12 months would be astronomical. The amount of people that would transfer, liquidate it, do something silly, invest in something they shouldn't, leave themselves worse off, would lead to you'd probably knock 1 or 2% off future GDP growth if you did it. That's how dangerous it would be. And I know, we have, there is a, kind of conflict of interest there where, a lot of what we do, although we don't only do DBs, we do a lot of other pensions and investment and planning advice. You do need people with these permissions. It is helping you. I've give you an example. I've had 3 clients this year of us who I've gone through the full advice process. They started off adamant they wanted to transfer. Oh, transfer really makes sense to me. I can't see why I'd want to stay in it. We've gone through the whole process with them. They've got really good reasons. We're happy that they've thought it through. And they understand what's going on. They understand. They've gone away for full advice. The advice has come back to keep the pension. They read all the review and they go, oh, I didn't really see it like that. Or actually, when you explain it like that, or, oh, I've never thought about that, or I didn't know that, or whatever it is. And they go, actually, this really works for me. I want to keep it. And they end up keeping it. But if they didn't have that, they'd have made the decision they didn't want to do because they wouldn't have been required to go and get that advice. And that tells you, everything you need to know really about why it's in place, because you just don't fundamentally know if it's a good or bad idea until you have a highly trained, highly regulated, highly insured, as well, specialist review it and give you advice. At the end of the day, it's advice. It's not a tick box exercise or a rubber stamp.
Yeah. Well, again, you literally answered my next question. So it was, what would you say to clients who say there is too much regulation in the market? So we can tick that one off. Jonathan, what would you say is your opinion? Oh, and then we have some difficult questions here. What is your opinion of the FCA's guidance on insistent clients? Do you think clients should have the statutory right to continue with a transfer after obtaining regulated and authorised pension transfer advice? Should they have the right to continue to complete a transfer out if they wish to?
So fundamentally, at the end of the day, there is no obligation to be advised to transfer and only be allowed to transfer if you're advised to transfer. Now, and, you do hear some commentators or say some people believe, eventually they're going to just remove the ability to transfer unless you're advised to do it. Personally, I think that's probably unlikely because it will probably cause a revolt, be a political suicide. But also, they probably just don't need to do it. What you're finding is more and more schemes, pension providers out there are unwilling to accept a client unless it's advised to transfer. Now, that, I can't prove this, but that is not, most likely not out of the goodness of their own heart. It is not because they want to help you. That is because it is commercially not viable for them to do so. Either they can't get insurance to do it, or the cost of insurance to do it means they'd have to charge you a higher amount than they charge everyone else, which is price discrimination, which you're not allowed to do. I still think insistent clients are always going to be there, or as they worked with Cameron James, because we use the dual advisor model. Technically speaking, we don't do insistent clients. If we've ever got one, it's called a retained client. And again, case by case basis. The vast majority of clients to come to us will never get to that stage because, they'll have been triaged out way before. But because it's getting harder and harder, they don't need to do it. It's almost getting kind of shadow banned in and of itself, because what you've got is a lot of pension transfer specialists just fundamentally will not sign the report. They won't, they have the abridged advice. And if they say no at the abridged advice, they have no obligation to go to the full advice review. And with the full advice, they might say, we'll sign to say you've had financial advice, but we're not going to sign any transfer paperwork that has a scheme name on it because we haven't reviewed the scheme. So you've got, there's very few pension transfer specialists that will do insistent clients. There's very few even under the dual advisor that will sign what's required to do it, even when not doing technically an insistent client. And again, most schemes that will accept you are through an advisor anyway. So you need an advisor who is willing to help you and taking on massive risk themselves to accept you and help you. That it's just not going to be the case. You cannot, there are no real schemes these days. You couldn't go off with one of the big SIP providers and say, right, someone's told me not to do it. You signed this bit of paperwork. I've scrubbled in, the name of the SIP at the top. Can I transfer my pension? Because they'll turn around and go, were you advised to transfer into this pension? And you'll say no, and they'll go, no, sorry, we can't accept it and won't accept it. So whilst fundamentally you are allowed to transfer and you've got a piece of paper, you've got no home for it. No one will take it. So that's the crux of it. So it won't be banned. They won't remove it. I'd be very surprised. It's just going to almost de facto be shadow banned just by how hard it is and how few providers there are.
Okay, now on to my final question, Jonathan. For clients who are trying to attain a positive transfer outcome, what can they do with their IFA to help increase their chances of receiving a positive transfer outcome?
Yeah, so this is the one where I alluded to before. This is the key one where building that rapport with your advisor is so important, because a lot of clients, they don't want to disclose their information, especially when it's financial. And who would? It's your nitty gritty. Do you want to admit that you've got a credit card problem, or you keep spending too much on holidays, or whatever it is? But the more you tell your advisor, the more they know about you, the more they articulate about you, the more you can build a rationale. They can help you articulate those goals, dreams, and aspirations. Where are you now? Where do you want to be? Where does all these assets you have fit into that? So the more you open up to your advisor, the more you some clients, just go, oh, by the way, I didn't want to tell you, but I've got £100,000 in a joint bank account or something. And you're like, why didn't you tell, you've shot yourself in the foot here, because that might have been the difference between a transfer, advising a transfer or not. But because you hadn't built the comfort, because you didn't want to disclose these things, you haven't put your best foot forward. And that's where working with, an advisor, especially, proper lifestyle financial advisors, as we call it, or planners, like Cameron James is, we will help you articulate those goals. Because, there's a very good chance you actually haven't sat down with the family and said, right, guys, what's our plan? Most people, and we all do it, we kind of wing it through life, really. We've got rough ideas of when we want to do things. I would like to stop work at 65, but God, wouldn't it be great to stop at 55? And remember those bucket list holidays we wanted to go on, and this, that, and the other. But most people haven't really put them down. They certainly haven't put it into super complex cash flow planning software like we use with all our clients. And they haven't actually said to themselves, right, this is what we want to do, this is what we need to do or want to do. And doing all that, we'll put it all in perspective, and you can go, right, I'm here, I want to get to here. DB does not help me get to there, but transferring might. And and articulate. And then the pension transfer specialist will go away with all that information, your properly articulated goals and dreams and where you want to be, and see if a transfer is something that will help you get there. And if it is it worth the risk, or can you afford to take the risk? So that's the key overwhelming thing. I'm not you almost want to get to the stage where you're inviting your you want your financial advisor to be invited to your next birthday party. That's how much you want to get involved and be with your financial advisor, because that is the best way. You'll put your best foot forward, and you'll get the most out of the advice process. If you do all of that, and even if the advice is to keep it and you go with the advice, you will have valued, you would have gotten so much value from that, because you'd have gotten guidance and this, that, and the other along the way.
All right, well, Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us. Very, very detailed feedback there. Guys, as I always say, if you want to book in with myself or one of our senior financial advisors, here you can see one of our senior financial advisors. It really is about having quality advice. Jonathan's one of our best advisors inside the company, has been doing DBs pretty much inside out in terms of getting clients ready for the pension transfer specialist. So, Jonathan, thank you for sharing all of your thoughts today. Subscribers, as always, please like and subscribe to the channel to let us know that we're doing a good job. And me and Jonathan look forward to speaking with you and seeing you soon. And as always, take care of your UK pension assets.